All right, welcome back to the channel. Gervonta Davis versus Vasily Lomachenko is one of the bigger fights in boxing that we want to see. Shawn Porter says that Gervonta Davis is the only person that can beat Vasily Lomachenko at lightweight. Let's talk about what Shawn Porter has to say in this video. All right, welcome back. Shawn Showtime Porter, commentator for Fox PBC, or the PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, also a contender in the welterweight division, former IBF champion, former WBC champion, and currently one of the best welterweights in the world. I think he's one of the top fighters in the world. Very underrated, a lot of dog in him. Shawn Showtime Porter was actually on PBC, and then the PBC has, I guess it's their Facebook page. They're putting out a lot of interviews from PBC fighters, trying to just keep boxing fans connected with the sport of boxing. Same thing that we're doing over here on this channel, just talking about what there is to talk about out there in the sport of boxing, man. Help us get through this quarantine that we're in, and hopefully sooner than later, back to real live fights so we can chop it up about that. But when he was asked a bunch of questions, Shawn Porter was asked questions on this particular podcast. He was asked a bunch of questions. He was asked about Errol Spence Jr. He was asked about himself. One of the interesting conversations that came up though was this thing between Vasily Lomachenko and Gervonta Davis. And so he says that he believes that Gervonta Davis is the only guy that can beat Vasily Lomachenko. Now, when he says only guy, obviously we're talking about, the lightweight division, not talking about guys up above lightweight, but specifically the people that are in the running for this lightweight division right now. It seems to me it's like one old guy, a bunch of young guys. And I don't mean to be offensive calling anybody an old guy, because I am much older than Vasily Lomachenko. So, let's not feign outrage. I will have a feign outrage video coming up a little bit later today that has something to do with Devin Haney. But these are the other guys in the in the lightweight division that are prominent guys that Vasily Lomachenko might fight. Now, Vasily Lomachenko is considered by a lot of people to be the number one pound for pound guy in the world. Personally, I have him at number 2. I know he's an excellent fighter. I've never particularly been a fan of the way that Vasily Lomachenko has been marketed as being this, incredible, better than anybody, that has fought in the last 50 years. That type of stuff I think is just, that's way over the top. But, that doesn't mean he's not a great fighter, because he absolutely positively is. I would say Juan Manuel Marquez isn't the greatest fighter in the last 50 years, but if you watch Juan Manuel Marquez fight, Juan Manuel Marquez is one heck of a fighter. So I don't mean to tear down Vasily Lomachenko by saying that. I'm just saying that the dude is an excellent fighter. Then you have Teofimo, and he's about to fight. We'll see when that happens, or if that happens, because Vasily Lomachenko doesn't seem too amped up about it. Teofimo Lopez, who is the IBF champion. WBA and WBO champion is Vasily Lomachenko. The IBF champion is Teofimo Lopez. Those guys are supposed to match up. The other major lightweights out there are Devin Haney, who was the WBC champion. He's now the WBC champion in recess. And then, of course, Gervonta Tank Davis, the WBA regular champion, which a lot of people act as if it's a regular champion. Because we know boxing, if there's so many belts, everybody's a champion. But Gervonta Davis isn't really a champion at 135 pounds. He's the WBA regular champion, to Vasily Lomachenko being the WBA super champion, and the WBC super champion is the guy that is really the champion. So the people that I do believe are the people, for the most part, that Shawn Porter is considering in this. And he's saying that Gervonta Davis is the only guy that can beat him. Now, I believe that a couple years ago, there might not have been anybody to beat him. Now, I agree that Gervonta Davis has the ability to beat Vasily Lomachenko. Personally, though, I don't think Vasily Lomachenko is going to get out of the Teofimo Lopez fight because there's just too much. It's just too ripe for shadiness over there. You know what I mean? It's too ripe for shadiness, and it's too much, and it reads too much like scripts to movies we've seen in the past, where the older guy who's kind of, who's reached his peak gets sold off to or replaced by the younger guy that has a lot of energy and a lot of years in front of him. So, understand that although I think Vasily Lomachenko is a better fighter than Teofimo Lopez, I don't know if he's going to get out of that fight. But Teofimo Lopez also has a lot of power, so that can cause him problems. But the main thing about Vasily Lomachenko right now that makes him vulnerable to Gervonta Davis or to Teofimo Lopez is what hits us all, and that is age. Vasily Lomachenko is without a doubt a very, very experienced fighter. He is a very, very skillful fighter. He's a very intelligent fighter. And usually when you're very skilled and you have a lot of experience, that's what you mean by intelligence. You know what I mean? Because he's got a lot of skills, so he can handle what is coming at him in the ring, and he has a lot of experience, which allows him to know what people are doing and apply his skills to certain circumstances again and again and again and again. And, that's what I think makes him an excellent fighter. But right now, if you look at the last several fights that he's had, you'll notice that, at lightweight, right? At lightweight, that he has, he's been dropped. He's gone the distance. He's been cut. And just generally speaking, he does not look like the same quote unquote unstoppable force that you saw at 130 pounds when he was, Lomachenko, and it just looked like he was playing with his food. That's not the situation up there at lightweight. At lightweight, he's been in real fights where the matchup has been a lot more even than it was at 130, with the exception, obviously, of Anthony $1 Million Corrala, who just kind of jumped into a shell and let him beat him up. But just my point is that he's just kind of on the downslide a little bit. Now, does that mean that he's on a downslide so much that he can't beat most of these lightweights? No. He would be a difficult fight for Devin Haney. He'd be a difficult fight, obviously, for Teofimo Lopez. Be a difficult fight for Gervonta Davis. But with that age and that's, the downward spiral that people go through, especially when you're like Vasily Lomachenko and you've been fighting since you were 5 years old and you're now 32, right? Or 30. Well, I'll just say he's 30, right? I think he's 31 though. But, from 31 years old, he's essentially the same age as Terrence Crawford. I think Terrence Crawford might be 22 or 32, something like that. So he's right around the same age, and wear and tear as somebody like a Terrence Crawford, maybe even more so, because Terrence Crawford, I think he started fighting at 9, but then he stopped for a few years and picked it up again at 13. My understanding is Vasily Lomachenko's been going hardcore since he was 5 years old. That's 27 straight years of training. That stuff really wears down on you. Now, addressing Gervonta Davis specifically, of all of the guys that I see that are at 135 pounds, I think that the most talented of all those guys is Gervonta Davis. Now, Gervonta Davis doesn't have the same size as a Teofimo Lopez or a Devin Haney, who I believe are going to wind up fighting at 140, at 147. I think that Gervonta Davis is similar to the same, pretty much the same natural size, same weight classes as Vasily Lomachenko is, a guy that came from 130. Now he's up at 135. I don't see him going up to 140 pounds just because his height, just because the height isn't there for him. But he has something that Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez don't have as much of, and that is experience fighting against multiple different types of fighters. He doesn't have the experience that we would like to have him. He's not like, he's fought ex-world champions, but He's beaten Jose Pedraza, which I think is a better win than either Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez has, except for if you maybe count Richard Comey with Teofimo Lopez. But, you know, his speed, his southpaw stance, his punching power, his defense to offense, in my opinion, are some of the best in boxing. And I definitely agree with Shawn Porter that Gervonta Davis has the ability to beat Vasily Lomachenko. Now, I'm not saying that he will beat Vasily Lomachenko. Personally, I don't even think those guys are going to fight. I don't really think that, Gervonta Davis and Floyd Mayweather Jr., Floyd Mayweather Jr. at least is going to make sure when that fight happens that Vasily Lomachenko, when the Gervonta Davis Vasily Lomachenko fight happens, that Gervonta Davis is going to be in a position to win that fight, because despite what Paulie Malignaggi might have to say about, and I'll do a video about that later, about what Floyd Mayweather Jr. can be as a trainer, as a promoter, and a guy that's developing fighters, dude, he's done an excellent job with getting Gervonta Davis where he wants to get. And Gervonta Davis is somebody that Lomachenko really wants to fight. So, you know, I think the fight will happen, but I think the fight will happen when Gervonta Davis is ready for that fight to happen, and it'll be a good fight, but I'll see Gervonta Davis winning just like Shawn Porter does. But anyway, you let me know what you think in the comment section, and with that, I'm out. Peace.